There's a picture you've seen 100 times before. A climber at the summit of Everest, arms raised, the world below their boots. The camera shakes from the wind, and somewhere, probably just out of frame, stands the one person who made that moment possible. But they're not cheering. They're not taking selfies. They're already thinking about the next trip down and back up. That unseen figure, that's the Sherpa. And this story, it's theirs. For decades, the Sherpas have been the silent strength behind some of the greatest mountaineering feats in history. They've carried the weight, literally and figuratively, while the rest of the world clapped for the guy with the GoPro. They've held the ladders over crevasses, they've set the ropes on deadly ridgelines, and they've done it in silence while the world called them helpers. But what if I told you that many of the most famous summits wouldn't exist without them? Everest might be the dream of the wealthy, but it's the reality of the Sherpa. Every season, hundreds of climbers show up with brand new gear, custom oxygen masks, and about 6 months of training, if we're being generous. Some have trained for years, others just trained their credit card. But no matter who they are, when the altitude hits, when the cold cuts through every layer, and when the summit feels 1,000 miles away, they all look to one person, the Sherpa, the one who's done this more times than they can count, the one who treats Everest like a commute. Yet, behind their strength is a quiet truth. Some of them no longer believe the risk is worth it. The danger is growing. The recognition still lags. And now, the very people who carried Everest on their backs are starting to walk away. This is the untold story of the real heroes of the mountain, of sacrifice, survival, and a silent rebellion that shook the tallest peak on Earth. Long before Everest became a bucket list item for CEOs and influencers, before Base Camp had Wi-Fi and espresso machines, the Sherpas were already there, living, farming, and worshipping in the shadow of the Himalayas. The name Sherpa. Hey, real quick, when was the last time you did something unforgettable? Viator makes it crazy easy to book real adventures. Everest Base Camp, Kilimanjaro, Tokyo, everything. I actually used it myself, and no joke, best decision I've ever made. Don't just watch other people live life, go live yours. Links below. Doesn't just mean guide. It comes from the Tibetan words shar, east, and pa, people. They are literally people from the east, tracing their roots back over 600 years to eastern Tibet. They settled in the Khumbu Valley, now home to Everest and Sagarmatha National Park. This wasn't some fluke of geography, it was survival. They crossed frozen passes looking for better land and freedom from persecution. And what they found became home. These high valleys, where the air is thin and the mountains touch the gods, forged a people who were tough, spiritual, and astonishingly well adapted to altitude. While most of us start wheezing after one flight of stairs in Kathmandu, the Sherpas can jog at 5,000 meters and carry loads that defy logic. But their story changed forever in the early 20th century, when Western explorers arrived, maps in hand, and Everest in their sights. Suddenly, these mountain people were no longer just farmers and herders. They became the engine behind every climbing dream, not because they asked for it, but because they were the only ones who could actually survive it. And let's clear up a common mistake. Not all porters are Sherpas, and not all Sherpas are porters. Sherpa is an ethnic group, a culture, a language, but over time, the word became shorthand for anyone carrying someone else's ambition up the mountain. Still, there's no denying that the Sherpas have owned this role, not with noise or ego, but with unmatched grit. They became high-altitude specialists, quietly setting records that most of us never even hear about. They didn't just adapt to the mountains, they became part of them. While climbers often arrive on Everest chasing glory, the Sherpas are already legends before the season even begins. Names like Appa Sherpa, who summited Everest 21 times, or Kami Rita Sherpa, who broke that record and then broke it again. By 2021, he had reached the top 25 times. And no, that's not a typo. That's dedication measured in vertical kilometers. And then there's Lakpa Sherpa, who quietly made history as the woman with the most Everest summits. 9 successful climbs. No big PR campaign, no documentary crew. Just sheer willpower and a deep personal drive. Her story doesn't end in a trophy room. It's about sending a message to her daughters and to the world. Strength doesn't need a spotlight. These aren't just statistics. They're human achievements stacked against odds that most climbers fear facing once. And if you've ever watched Everest, Beyond the Limit, or the documentary Sherpa, then you've seen Furbatashi Sherpa. With 21 Everest summits and 34 ascents of peaks above 8,000 meters, he was the backbone of commercial expeditions until he wasn't. After watching too many friends die and feeling the weight of risk overtake the reward, he made a decision. He walked away. Because for all the fame that Western climbers chase, Sherpas often climb to feed their families, and they do it with almost no margin for error. There are no medals for surviving the icefall one more time, no record book entry for dragging a frostbitten client down safely, no podiums, just another trip, another risk, another quiet legend added to a growing list that the world too often overlooks. But up in the Khumbu Valley, everyone knows their names. For many, Everest is a dream worth $60,000 to $100,000. But for the Sherpas, it's a job, one that pays around $5,000 to $10,000 per season, if they're lucky. And in a country where the average yearly income is barely $700, that number can be life-changing. But here's the catch. That money comes at a cost most of us wouldn't dare accept. Before most climbers even step foot on the mountain, Sherpas have already made up to 20 journeys between camps, hauling food, fuel, oxygen, and sometimes the ego of their clients. They do it with packs heavier than their own body weight, often climbing through the Khumbu Icefall, where the terrain shifts and collapses without warning. That section alone has taken more lives than any other part of the mountain. One misstep, one crack in the ice, and everything is over. In 2014, that reality struck with brutal clarity. 16 Sherpas were killed in a single avalanche while preparing the route for foreign climbers. Most of the world saw it as a tragedy, but in the Sherpa community it was something deeper. It was a tipping point, because while clients were being offered refunds or rescheduled trips, the families of the fallen Sherpas were offered just $400 in compensation. That's not even enough for a decent jacket on Everest, let alone a funeral. And yet, Sherpas still show up, not because they don't understand the risk, but because they don't have better options. Climbing is one of the only ways to earn that kind of money in rural Nepal. But the danger never fades. As one Sherpa guide put it, we climb with our hearts in our mouths. It's not the summit that scares them, it's the return trip. Because no one ever gets paid if they don't make it back down. April 18th, 2014. Just after sunrise, a 14,000-ton block of ice collapsed from above the Khumbu Icefall. In a matter of seconds, 16 lives were buried beneath the avalanche, 13 of them Sherpas. It was Everest's deadliest day at the time. And unlike most high-altitude tragedies, this one didn't happen during a summit push. It happened during the job. A routine day. Another trip through the danger zone. The news hit base camp like a shockwave. Helicopters buzzed the sky as bodies were recovered. Grief hung over the mountain, but so did something else. Anger. Because for the first time, the Sherpas weren't just mourning. They were questioning everything. Why were they always the first ones up the icefall? Why were they paid less, insured less, and expected to risk more? And why, when they died doing the hardest work on the mountain, did so few people know their names? That day lit a fire. In the days that followed, Sherpas gathered not to climb, but to strike. They demanded better pay, proper insurance, a relief fund for families of the fallen. And when those demands were ignored, they did the unthinkable. They walked off the mountain. For the first time in Everest history, a climbing season was canceled not by weather or war, but by the people who made the climb possible. Foreign climbers were stunned. Some were sympathetic. Others were furious. One even asked the guide, "Can't you just talk to their owners?" Yes, someone actually said that, on a mountain. But something had shifted. The Sherpas weren't just porters anymore. They were professionals. They were voices. They were no longer willing to carry other people's dreams if it meant burying their own. That avalanche may have shaken the mountain, but what followed shook the system. In the years since the strike, some things have improved. On paper, insurance payouts are higher. Some guiding companies now offer better wages and safety protocols. Sherpas have started their own expedition businesses, claiming more control over their work and their future. But the deeper issues? They're still hanging in the thin air. Sherpas continue to carry the heaviest loads, take the greatest risks, and make the least noise about it. They are still the first up the mountain and the last down. And yet, their names rarely make the headlines unless tragedy strikes. While tourists blog about their life-changing experience, the Sherpas are already prepping gear for the next group. There's a saying up there, climbers visit the mountain, Sherpas survive it. But now, some Sherpas are saying enough. Veteran guide Phurba Wangchu. Sherpa warned that within a decade, there may be no Sherpas left guiding on Everest. And can you blame them? Even with their unmatched skill, their unique genetic adaptation to altitude, and their decades of experience, they're still the ones taking the fall, literally, when things go wrong. And here's the truth. No one wants to say out loud, Everest is getting more dangerous. Climate change is destabilizing the ice falls, crowds are growing, and the pressure to summit, especially for paying clients, is higher than ever. The reward for Sherpas? Sometimes it's a paycheck. Sometimes it's a photo at base camp. But too often it's a name carved into a memorial stone halfway up the trail. If the Sherpas disappear from Everest, the mountain doesn't just lose its guides. It loses its soul. The Sherpas don't need pity. They need respect. Not just in headlines when tragedy strikes, but in every summit celebration, every expedition brochure, every so-called conquering of Everest. Because if anyone has truly conquered that mountain, it's the ones who live in its shadow, pray to its spirit, and walk its ridges like they were born there, because they were. So the next time you see a photo of someone fist-pumping on the summit, ask yourself, who got them there? The answer, more often than not, is a man or woman who didn't pose for the picture, who didn't chase fame, who didn't leave footprints for glory but for survival. And maybe, just maybe, it's time we all start climbing down from our egos and recognize the Sherpas not as helpers, but as heroes. If this story moved you, do one thing today. Say their names. Learn about Kamirita, about Lakpa, about Furbatashi. Don't let their legacy stay in the shadows of the people they carried. And if you ever set foot on that mountain, remember, you're not alone. You're walking a trail built by those who came before you. Rope by rope, step by step. Support ethical expedition companies, tip well, ask questions, and most of all, respect the mountain by respecting those who call it home. Because Everest doesn't belong to the ones who visit. It belongs to the ones who carry the mountain on their backs, in their hearts, and in silence.